Good morning, everyone. I hope you are having a great weekend thus far. So I'm excited to share some of this information. It's been kind of one of those things I've been geeking out on completely. I made a video the other day about a little bit about the design side, and I was talking about the reading that I'm doing with the natal and design for the astrocartography. But I wanted to kind of take some time to show a little bit about why this makes me geek out so much and what's so interesting about it, and um, sort of like what I'm doing with it. So yeah, let's just do that. And I'm gonna be putting this up on my YouTube channel too. So definitely go there. I am like one of my goals for this next coming up year is to try to be more consistent and start showing up more, so that I can go through some of this stuff that I'm endeavoring to do, and share with you guys. So, yes, this is going to be about the design chart, difference between the design and the natal charts, and not only the differences, but like where they come together and some interesting dynamics that I've been finding with them, as I go along. So, the design center and the design crystal, which the design crystal is going to tell us a lot about our life purpose. It is called up from the earth 8 hours prior to our conception, and it's like the father's energy that calls this up. And this like is all fascinating to me. I can't really stop talking about it. So you hear me talking about this design crystal thing because it's like, and so I keep going into this, wanting to know and understand more about it. But it's called up from the Father's energy, 8 hours prior to the moment of our conception. And it carries the energies of Earth at the moment of our conception. So it's got this collective conscious, type energy that it carries. It's going to be what provides the archetype of who we're going to be in this lifetime. And this is the part that really just makes me contemplate so much. It's the fact that it can be worn in different lifetimes by different beings, different spirits, different people, and possibly even in different timelines. So there's a possibility and a potential. And of course, all of this is possibility and experimentation. One of the things that I really love about human design is that I feel encouraged to explore and to experiment and to see what works and what doesn't, and how it really feels for me and for the clients that I work with to see from their experiences, these connections and the potential for these major breakthroughs. So it can be worn possibly in different timelines. So there's a potential that somebody else could be wearing this design crystal that I'm wearing like right now as we speak in a different timeline. And that is crazy to me. So, you know, when I have dreams or when I'm having these experiences, are those things from like a past life, or are those things from like the experiences that someone else that wore my design crystal, had, or is it something that I'm like concurrently sharing with someone that's sharing this crystal with me? Okay, so yeah, I can go on and on and on and on about this, but pretty much it's not only worn by us; it can be worn by other people in different times, and it's going to orchestrate the template and the unfolding of our bodies. So it carries the subtle body template that differentiates how we're going to be, who we're going to be. It lives and resides in the ajna center. And so combined with the personality crystal and the magnetic monopole, it creates us. So there could never be another combo like this because of this. So even though this design crystal has been worn by others in different, times, realities, whatever, the combination of all of these things, the personality, the magnetic monopole, and this design crystal creates this uniqueness that makes us who we are. That's just beautiful to me. So, okay, so um, I'm gonna go into the astrocartography dynamics because I was sitting and I've been thinking, and someone brought this to me. I will say that Milana B. Jade had initially brought this to me, and she mentioned, that she had been looking at her design chart. And I was like, well, let me look at mine as well, um, because I'm curious now that you mention it, how does that really play out? Both of these parts make us who we are. So I started pulling out that and looking at mine. And I was really interested in finding out and understanding this concept more, because when I looked at the chart, I saw a lot of things that were quite different to my tropical, I'm going to say this tropical natal chart, but also similar. And some of the things explained a lot about my personality and this subtle dynamic energy that I feel like I have, that I don't necessarily see in my natal chart. So this is a natal chart. This is the natal chart, right? And when I'm doing astrocartography, I talk all the time about the angles, the lines, and how in that previous video, I mentioned that living on certain lines is going to impact, like if we're trying to move a certain planet to the midheaven line, if we want to see an increase in our career, then the planet that we move there is going to impact what type of careers are going to be successful in this location. So I'm using myself as an example here. And just to kind of explain a little bit about why, first of all, I chose to live on my Uranus line, which Uranus is got this nature of liberation, of freedom, of expansion. In the sense of, when I say expansion, I mean like this ability to see outside of the box. So, it's innovative, it's creative, it's dynamic, it breaks rules, it goes against what the norm is. Things that I do resonate strongly with in my personality, in a lot of ways, even though I have a Capricorn ascendant. But what I've noticed for me is that when something, like if there's a rule that feels right and resonates, then I'm fine following it. But it's those rules that feel limiting and outdated that I feel that Uranus energy come through and help me to like break the chains of. So it's definitely got this liberating energy. Um, but in regards to like career and types of career that would be connected to Uranus, we can say astrology, we could say technology, we could say science, anything that's pushing um, new new dynamic ways out into the world and breaking the old boundaries, the limits, because that's definitely one of the things. It's breaking the limitations, things that have restricted us and held us back. It shows up in places where we need to be liberated. And so I really actually do really love the Uranian energy. But in my chart, there's a few reasons why I decided that moving to my Uranus line would be a good idea. I talked to you about the strength of planets and how when we're moving to an angle, that does play a part. So Jupiter, for instance, could be getting really badly aspected, which mine does not. It's just that I don't have a Jupiter line midheaven in the United States. I really don't have a Jupiter line that runs in the United States. My closest Jupiter line runs off of the coast of the US, and then it picks back up in Europe and in Africa. So that's why I didn't choose to live on my Jupiter line right now. It's actually one of my long-term goals to get there. But this is a journey, and I feel like this was definitely the next step in my journey from, where I was before. So anyways, I chose my Uranus line for a couple of reasons. Like I said, first of all, a lot of times we don't really have enough information on the outer planets to say that they're in exaltation or not. But technically, Uranus is exalted in Scorpio, so that automatically is going to give Uranus strength. The 11th house. So the 11th house is actually, and I'm using whole signs, and I really only use whole signs. But the 11th house is the natural house that Uranus rules. So Uranus is very comfortable in this house. Uranus is strong here. And it's a good place to put Uranus, because especially even if you have a Uranus that is getting a lot of challenging aspects, this is a good place for Uranus to be. So the 11th house is also, according to Hellenistic astrology or ancient astrology, a good fortune. So there's good fortune in this house. This is a good placement, the luckiest house in the chart. So Uranus being here, that's another thing that's great about that. And also you can see that my midheaven is, even in my natal chart, relatively close to my midheaven. My Uranus is close to that, but not super close. I could get it. I got it closer by my move out here. Um, but another thing, I'm looking at the aspects that are being made to my Uranus from the other planets. So, what conversations are these planets having with my Uranus? Uranus is making a pretty harmonious. Actually, kind of one of those that shows some hidden potentials, hidden talents that I might not have really been consciously aware of. It is making a semi-sextile to my Pluto and also to my Neptune. Uranus makes a sextile to my Venus and also makes a trine to my Jupiter. Although wide, I still will, I mean, it's a wide trine, let's say that. But at least it would get at like a half a point when I do my scoring for it. Now this square, there's only one square. It also makes a strong trine to my Mercury. So we've got like five already aspects that are really positive. And the only challenging aspect that my Uranus really is making is to my Mars. And this is a wide square. So this is not an exact square by at all. It's not really a super strong one. And we have quite a bit of separation, pretty much the same degree of separation as we do from the trine from my Jupiter to my Uranus, but I would just give that a half off. But overall, this Uranus still comes in really strong. And so when I talk about Uranus, it can be unexpected events and shocks. And when we do the scoring, we see Uranus and Mars usually as the planets that increase that score quite a bit, even when positively aspected. But I will say that the aspect dynamics are going to kind of give me an indication of, will these events that are unexpected play out to our benefit, or are they going to be something that might be more of a hampering for us? And in my situation, I feel for sure that Uranus is going to usually play more of a beneficial part and a liberating part that works in my favor if I can get outside of my Capricorn ascendant and go with the flow. That's the challenge for me, honestly. This is a sextile dynamic between my Uranus and my ascendant, and sextiles, they're harmonious if we put forth some action. So I have to actually kind of consciously put forth action to get outside of that structured thinking that I carry with my Capricorn ascendant. So Uranus is constantly kind of like pushing me out. Saturn is kind of like get back in. So it's an interesting little dynamic that I have going on. But when I do go with the flow in a structured way, because let's not forget Aquarius, which Uranus and Saturn both rule, has those dynamics kind of intertwined into it. So when I go with the flow when needed and allow, it works pretty well. So that is the main reason why I decided that for the US, living on my Uranus line was going to be the most beneficial line for me to be on. This is just one of those things that I'm throwing out because I have studied Vedic astrology a little bit. I'm not going to say like I still have a lot to learn in that area, but I also did study Babylonian astrology, and in Babylonian astrology, we are going to be going into sidereal astrology, and so I love all of them. I love all of it, and I think that all of it has impact and all of it has meaning. The way that I see it is that the tropical zodiac is based on basically the solstices, the equinoxes, and it's going to tell me about how I experience life on this planet, on Earth, because it's basically from the Earth's perspective that I'm getting those angles. So the horizon is showing me, from the Earth perspective, when I'm using the tropical, that my ascendant is in Capricorn. But when we're going into sidereal, sidereal is dealing with constellations. So although my sun is in the tropical zodiac in Pisces, it's actually in the constellation of Aquarius, right where the water is being poured out, where with all the 100 stars. So my sun is actually in the constellation of Aquarius. Now there is a 24-degree difference that occurs between the tropical and the sidereal zodiac. So give or take some minutes, and depending on which Ayanamsha you're using, for a lot of the Vedic, it's about 24 degrees, but there's a little bit of a difference between the Vedic, and there's different ones that you can use with the Vedic as well. But between the Vedic and the Fagan Bradley Ayanamsha, which is the one I was taught to use for Babylonian astrology, and I do like to use that one. So, needless to say, my ascendant in the sidereal zodiac is in Sagittarius, and my sun and my Mars are actually going to be in Aquarius. Now, my moon, which in tropical is in Aries, now it's actually in the constellation of Pisces with my Mercury at 0 degrees Pisces. So the house placements actually haven't shifted because I use whole signs. So they are the same, but the signs actually have changed because we're now looking from a perspective of not from the earth when I look at this, but from the constellations themselves. And this is probably something I will be looking more into and incorporating more as I go down the road. We will see. So who knows? But back to the other part that I was talking about, because I can go down rabbit holes. That is my 6447, I think. But so this is the personality side. When I'm breaking these apart, it's interesting to take a look at. Both sides make us who we are. Both sides complete us. But how do they interact? Like, how does it really work? And that's the part that I'm really still trying to feel through. This is my personality side. So this is my natal chart, basically, what we see here. So these positions, these gates that are being activated, this is my natal birth chart. And either way, for me, either side, I'm still a projector. So that doesn't change or shift in my design. Okay, so this is going to be my chart for my current location. This is my natal chart. And you can see that it's a little bit different. I'm sorry, not my natal chart. It's my natal personality side, but this is not my natal chart. This is my chart relocated to my current location. So in this current location, my midheaven and my Uranus are now even tighter together. They're much closer. So I have my midheaven actually making an exact semi-sextile to Pluto, and still Uranus and my midheaven now making a sextile to Neptune. And we see that my ascendant has shifted in degrees. So it hasn't changed signs, but it's shifted 10 degrees. And it's now below my Venus. And Venus is making a very tight conjunction to my ascendant. So this was definitely a good thing for me, moving to this location, Venus here, as well as my part of fortune coming out of the 12th house into the first house, which is going to be a more tangible placement for the part of fortune. Um, Honestly, it manifests from my experience, from the 12th house. I feel the manifestations are things that they're subtle and I might not notice them until they have already happened. Like they happen out of nowhere and I don't really recognize it as much as the manifestations of my part of fortune in the first house. I have seen that play out more in this physical reality and as a more tangible thing for me to embrace. So that's actually a really good shift here to have with Venus so close to the ascendant. My Venus not too bad off herself, and this was also something that I did consider when moving out here. But because I'm not shifting my ascendant by sign, I'm not changing the house placements. Only the angles have shifted a little bit. So my IC is now going to be further away from my Chiron when I move to this area, but still in the fifth house. Okay, and so this is the scoring for my current location. And when I do scoring, I have been making sure that I make this clear that these scores are based on the angle dynamics that are going on. They are not based on the conversations that my planets are having with each other. You still need to be able to assess the chart. You still need to be able to relocate the chart and see what's going on in the chart and recognize, well, do I have bad placements in the 12th house? Do I have bad placements in the sixth house that are going to be impacting my health? So yeah, we're going to look at the scores. I take those into consideration because I know that they're speaking to the planetary interactions with my angles, but I still need to look at these charts to see what's going on. Prior to me incorporating the software into this, I did relocations only based off of looking at the charts. And that is honestly, it's the best way to do it. Without doing that, you're going to be missing something. So this is just a beautiful thing to incorporate, with the understanding that these scores represent how the angles are interacting with the planets. And so here, you can see I have really high scores. This is my major scoring. And in major scoring, we are going to be only looking at and taking into consideration major aspects to the angles. So that is my trine, my opposition, my sextile, my squares, my quincunx. I count that as a major aspect. But you can see that I have a lot of 1000s in this region, including my excitement and instability score. So yes, I knew that was going to be the case with living on my Uranus line. And so, um, how have I experienced that? Let's talk about this. Let's talk about how I experience this energy because I think that's important to put in perspective. Now, I have an affinity for Uranian principles, and I feel very strongly connected to Uranus. It's partially probably because of the trine from Uranus to my Mercury. And that may be what it is, Uranus being the higher octave of Mercury. But I have always felt this strong connection to Aquarius. It can also be connected probably to the fact that my sun is actually and my Mars are in the constellation of Aquarius. So I do feel this strong connection to Uranus. I feel that this energy works pretty harmoniously in my life. With again, me understanding that there's going to be definitely potentials for changes and unexpected events. The good thing is that a lot of these unexpected events have been blessings and they have worked out to benefit me. And so that is something that we need to be considering when we're looking at this. But yes, my score is going to be high in excitability. Um, surprises. So another thing with living on the Uranus line, ups and downs with career, needing to learn to save for those rainy days because um, there's going to be those ups and it's going to ebb and flow. And that's just built into the way Uranus works. And so understanding that and learning, this is a good lesson for me, honestly, learning to save for rainy days, something that I've never been great at because I was a spender. But it's a lesson that I'm being taught now by living on this Uranus line that I need to um, learn to save for rainy days. And because the way that my career flows, things can go up and down, and that's just the nature of Uranus. So if I were holding too tightly to my Capricorn ways, this could be a very challenging thing, and it can cause a lot of discomfort. That's usually what we see with Uranus. We usually see the discomfort coming when we are fighting against what it's trying to liberate us from or trying to show us. So, and I believe that with all the planets, honestly, but especially the outer planets, they have messages. Like I feel like they have messages that they're trying to tell us, and when we are resistant, that's when they start getting a little forceful and it starts becoming discomfort. So the more that we allow, the easier we make this experience. But you can see um, a lot of high scores. Vocation score was 500. Um, my responsibility focus score, as far as the overall, is 0. But this is where it shifts, and this is when we go into detailed aspects. And I'm starting to look at even down to quadnovials, um, the sesquiquadrate, and we're going to be looking at more of the harmonics when we start looking at this. We still see that I have high scores, relatively high scores. So my friendship and family, my detailed friendship and family score is really high. Love and romance high. Vocation and career score very good. As long as it's over 150, honestly, that's great. So my optimism and opportunity and responsibility and focus goes up, which I definitely feel this. I am very focused and responsible out here in this area. So even though it doesn't show up in my detail, my overall score, my major dynamics, it definitely is felt by me um, through this detailed reading, this scoring. The imagination and inspiration comes up here where it was 0 there. And that again, we can even be looking at those semi-sextiles that I was talking about from my Uranus to my Neptune and my Uranus to my Pluto. So that comes in. And we still have a high excitability score, but it's definitely lower than it was on my detailed. And there is some excitement here, but like I said, overall, the experiences have been pretty positive. So now, flipping the script. This is where it gets interesting. So this is my design chart, right? I will say this. When you run your human design report, and it will show you your natal date, it will show you the UTC, and then it will show you the local time. And then on the design date, it will be in UTC. You need to correct the time. And I actually did a check on this because what you can do, I check the gates to confirm my accuracy on this. So my natal time said with the UTC was 1737. I needed to correct that because it's 5 hours difference for my current location. So I needed to take that back to 1237 to get the correct chart for my design. And I confirmed this by looking at, well, Sagittarius 23, what gate is that going to put my Mars in? Okay. And if you have Cheaton Parkins' Book of Lines book, it's a quick way that you can check this. And mine is actually in the gate 11, line 1. So that was how I was confirming these placements and definitely checking the moon, which my design moon is in the gate 62. So confirming that again as well. Quickly, you can find that in that book. So to make sure that things were right, when I ran my chart and I was only using the UTC time, it was not right. So definitely make sure that you're correcting for time when you're pulling your design chart if you want to see that. And this is what we get. So I find it interesting because, whoa, I've got a lot in Sagittarius in my design chart. And that does explain, because I'm a person that cannot sit still. I move all the time and I love to. Like, I like to move it and I like to visit other places. I am so drawn to foreign cultures and to just being around foreign people. I love it. Like, I love to get that experience. I feel like I have so much spiritual growth from it. And I resonate strongly with people that are Sagittarius. In my natal birth chart, Sagittarius is where my Neptune is, and Sagittarius is where my part of fortune is in my birth chart. And in my sidereal chart, my ascendant is in Sagittarius. So I found it so interesting to see that when I looked at my design side, there was such a huge influence of Sagittarian energy there, which just, it really blew my mind. And not only that, this is all in my 10th house. You know, this is part of the career. This is the career house, your highest status in the world. My sun is right conjunct the midheaven here. And I've got Mercury, Neptune, and Mars as well in Sagittarius, a major stellium. When we have those stelliums, it lets me know that these are areas of major focus in my life that I need to be embracing. So this is like a hidden message to me, almost like this secret that kind of unfolded by seeing this. Now, my moon is in Capricorn and my ascendant is at 0 degrees Pisces, which my Mars in my natal chart is at 0 degrees Pisces. So, again, interesting connections that I see. My Uranus remains in Scorpio, but my Venus moved into Scorpio in this chart. So, yeah, just a lot of interesting things. Some planets are not going to shift too much from the natal and design chart because the outer planets move slower. So if we're looking 3 months back, most of them are going to be in the relative same place. Not always. Sometimes we will see those changes, but in my situation, my design chart was actually in 78, my natal in 79. So there was some shifting, but like Saturn still was in Virgo at different degrees though, but it was still there. It was direct. That is a big thing. In my natal chart, it was retrograde. So another thing, my Mercury is retrograde here in this design chart in Sagittarius. So that, first of all, Mercury is not strong in Sagittarius. That is where it is going to be in its detriment. So um, it's naturally the ruler of Gemini, so it's in its detriment in Sagittarius. It's retrograde, so my Mercury's taking some hits here. It's got some squares going to it. It's actually combusted by the sun, and in my natal birth chart, I actually have my Mercury is in the phase of heliacal rising. It's visible, which is actually a rare thing for Mercury, but it's a strengthening thing, which I need because my Mercury gets impacted. It's in detriment in my natal chart. As I'm sorry, it's in the fall in my natal chart, but it does get help by being in that phase of heliacal rising where it gains power. So I could talk about this stuff for hours if you let me. But these are just like little things that I started noticing that were super interesting about this design chart. So the design date again is in UTC. So be sure to correct for your location. And that's going to vary depending on where you are. So this is my design side. And as you can see, this is still projector. Um, yeah, wait a minute. No, manifester, isn't it? Okay, that's interesting. Wait, let me go back here. Both of them. Okay, that's interesting. That is both manifester. I don't know what I was thinking about, but yeah, because these are these are two motors. So that's interesting actually. Okay, now I've got something else to think about. Sometimes it's like as a projector, just talking these things out brings these new insights to me. And I don't know what I was thinking, but that's really interesting to see. So my design did change by my charts being separated, which is interesting. I'm gonna have to really think about that now. Okay, that's got my mind blown a little bit. So this is my design side anyway. And you can see this is gonna be what's showing up in my design chart. Oh my goodness, that's blowing my mind. So okay. I'll probably be back like talking about that. Um, who knows when, but yeah. So this is my design side, and we saw that playing out when we were looking at this design chart. Really fascinating stuff. So this is my design and natal composite. As if as if enough wasn't enough, my mind is thinking like, okay, so now I've separated them. What does it look like if I put them back together? Because all of these years I've only been really studying my natal chart, which is going to be based on my personality side and not incorporating my design side. So I've taken apart both of them. I've looked at my natal chart, I've looked at my design chart. Now I'm putting them together, and this is what we get, which is interesting. So my ascendant in my part of fortune and my Mercury are now in Aquarius, and Mercury is in exaltation as far as I see. They say it's exalted in Virgo, but I do feel that Mercury is exalted in Aquarius, and there's a couple of reasons why I feel that way. But Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury, so um, I have found people with Uranus and Mercury to be laser sharp. I do feel that, but it's also interesting that my Mercury, when I put these two things together, is actually in this exaltation. When I look at them, the dynamics of my Mercury pulled apart, they're both detriment or in fall, and they're taking hits. But then in this chart, I see that my Mercury is actually in exaltation. My ascendant is in Aquarius. From my natal perspective, when we are looking at the sidereal, my sun is in this vicinity. So my sun and my Mars are in Aquarius. My part of fortune now in Aquarius, and this is in the first house. Mercury is in its house of rejoicing. So I have Mercury in exaltation. I have Mercury rejoicing in the first. I have my part of fortune in the first. Mercury is conjunct my ascendant. This is really interesting. Now, as far as Mars and my sun, they are in the 12th house. Not great. Not great placements for these planets. All of these are kind of getting this energy of the opposition from Jupiter in the seventh. So that is interesting to look at. And I have quite a few um, aspects that present as challenging. So like four sesquiquadrats, one semi-square, two, I still have the two semi-sextiles going on up here with Uranus, between Uranus, Venus, Neptune, and Pluto. So that's interesting to look at. And Uranus is still relatively close to my midheaven. I don't think I was meant to get away from Uranus on my midheaven. Like I've been thinking about this more and more. When we look at all this, these are tools. These are things to help us guide ourselves, to be guided on this journey. But I don't think there's really ever getting away from what we're here to really do. And so this is fascinating. This is fascinating that no matter how I pull it and no matter how I look at it, Uranus is always relatively close to this point or impacting it in some way. And it's just one of those things to think about. But yeah, there's quite a few challenging aspects going on in this chart. I don't look at this as a bad thing. I just look at it as areas where I have come here to grow and learn. My 12th house, yeah, 12th house can be the house of enslavement. Really, it can be mental enslavement for the most part. It's the house of the unconscious. It can be institutions, it can be hospitals, it can be all kind of things. But at the end of the day, from a spiritual perspective, it can also be this place where we are tapping into the collective consciousness. So um, my Mars is an exaltation in Capricorn, even though it's getting opposed by Jupiter, which is not the worst opposition in my opinion as well. But it's in the 12th house, and this is not a good place for Mars, but it does help that it's an exaltation. So just interesting things to think about and look at. And I'm still in that process of integrating all of this. I'm kind of just talking it out right now with you guys and learning as I go myself, like seeing stuff I wouldn't have seen if I hadn't have been doing this. So this is what we get when I relocate my design chart. And yeah, this is interesting, right? So we still see now in this area, Mars is really close to my midheaven. Um, this is great for me athletically. This has been great for me physically, honestly. I actually obtained my personal training certification this year. I do teach Zumba. And so it's interesting to see that playing out as well. So there's a lot of interesting things going on in this area. And seeing this actually made sense because I was like, not really earlier this year, I was like, I was just trying to do everything. You know, I was getting going and I was like, look, I am going to do this because I love working out. So I'm going to become a personal trainer. And I love doing Zumba. Really, I started doing this stuff because it was a way for like for me to keep myself healthy. So, you know, but to see that this Mars is up here by my midheaven so close, as well as Neptune, is interesting. So we have both of those dynamics playing out. Ascendant in Pisces in this area. And so, and I can see it. You know, my son, my natal son is in the sign of Pisces as well. So just interesting things. Part of fortune in the third house. It does great in the sign of Taurus, with it's at 0 degrees, but it does great in the sign of Taurus. So yeah, communication. Like the more that I get into communicating, maybe this is where I might see some benefit. And there's also healing here in this area for me around my communication, which is real. That has been the truth. I can't even, oh my goodness, so much healing. And in my natal birth chart, I have my quite a few planets in the third house. That's my Pisces house, my Mars, my Sun, my South Node, my Mercury, all are in the third house in Pisces. So again, in this chart, the third house is definitely being impacted. So a lot of interesting things. Uranus and Venus in the ninth house connected to divination, spirituality, astrology, um, all of those things. So in Hellenistic astrology, this is, they called it God, and the third house was called goddess. So that's where we start tying in some of the modern terms. People would connect it with religion, but on a deeper level, this is actually a house of divination, spirituality, astrology, that all go into the ninth house. So just so much information. So this is the scoring on my design side for my current location. You can see the vocation and career score is super high because, like I was saying, Mars is on that midheaven point. Neptune is up there. There's just a major stellium around that midheaven in this area. It really shows up for me. I don't know if I want to leave this area, to be honest. At this point in my life, I think maybe going places where I don't have high scores in certain areas might help me to like find relaxation for a couple months, but then coming back to home base, just based on what I've experienced here and what I see in my scoring and in my charts. But you can see like my responsibility and focus score, it wasn't really high in my natal design, but in this one, it is 1,000. It's very high. Actually, the excitement and instability comes down a little bit here, but education and communication 1,000, vocation and career 1,000. It's like what I've been seeing the more I do these is that I'm seeing where the pieces fit together. So we might be missing an area in our natal chart, but when we look at the design side, we start seeing where these pieces start coming together to create the whole. And remember, at the end of the day, it takes both of these to make us one, to make us us. And then this is for the current locations, the detailed design side. So still that responsibility and focus score is super high. I it's definitely going to be related to my Saturn as well. The energy of my Saturn. But we see the excitement and instability drop off here. Imagination and inspiration is there. So I feel like I get a good balance of everything in this area. But I know that I have to build in times for rest because this responsibility and focus score, I'm talking about 100% driven all the time. It's hard to stop thinking. It's hard to stop working. And so I have to make sure that I am consciously taking the time to do that. All right, so I hope that this was informative and interesting. It was interesting to me. I hope it was interesting for you. I wanted to just tell you a little bit about some of the services that I'm offering. So I do still do foundational human design readings. The more that I evolve and the more that I shift, consider myself a astro quantum human design woman. So you usually get a little bit of flavor from both of them in all of my readings. I use human design for everything now. But I do the foundational human design readings. Often I do bring in some astrological things if my spirit guides me to bring those up, if they're important. And we've had a lot of major transits going on this year, so often that is the case. Then I have follow up human design readings that are 60-minute readings, the astrocartography and G Center reading. So I've recently done this. I've added this astrocartography for the design side only. So if you've already had a 60-minute astrocartography and G Center reading with me, which in that reading we are only focusing on the natal side, and you want to learn more about your design side and how it might be impacting your location, now I've just added the astrocartography design side only. But please note that this is only for the design side. So this is only recommended for you to book after you've had the astrocartography G Center reading, which is going to focus on your natal design. This is kind of one of those things I threw in for people that had already done the um, the astrocartography reading with me, but still wanted to come back and see their design side. Now, for those of you who haven't had either one with me, I also have the astrocartography natal and design reading. And in that reading, it's a 90-minute reading. We look at both of those sides, both of those dynamics. And then the astrocartography for couples and families. Um, and one thing I didn't put up here was that I've also incorporated, and it's on my website if you go there, if you've had an astrocartography reading with me and you are interested in getting scoring and a chart for additional locations, it's up to 7 locations. It's a 30-minute session, and after that you get the PDF handout of all those locations. I'll kind of quickly go through those with you, and it's for $55.55. So it's only 30 minutes, 55 to get 7 additional locations. And I kind of will talk to you quickly through that. It won't be a long session, but we'll kind of get straight to the point because you've already had that foundational reading with me in regards to that. So, and also, last but not least, the birth time rectification. So I making sure that I let people know that I'm doing this. It's actually a very detailed process that I go through to come up with your birth time. I do combine astrology with human design when I'm doing this. It starts out for me going through the astrological perspectives in my intake form, which I recently updated. I'm going to be asking a variety of questions. I need to state this, this is important. Um, when you are listing events, I need the exact date. if if you don't know the exact date, anything outside of a week of the event will not be beneficial. I can't use it because I am looking at progress to natal charts. I'm looking at the solar arc, and I'm looking at the transits that are going on, and these can shift dynamic. I mean, quite a bit, especially when we're looking at fast moving planets. And the more exact to degrees that I am, the stronger I know what between the times, because sometimes it comes because I'm actually getting the times to the minute. And so to do this, I need as exact as possible. So if you don't remember, you can still include information. Like if you had a significant event that took place in a month and you're not sure of the date, you can still include it, but I can't really use it when it comes to generating the time. So I need as many events as possible that are going to be exact on the day. I don't need the time that the event occurred, like as far as the minutes, the hour, but I need the day. So the day that something happened, for instance, the day that your child was born, the day that you got married, if you had a trauma that occurred, the day that that happened. If you can't get the day, I can still usually work with a week. If you give me like a week span of this happening, I can still use that. But outside of that, it really doesn't help. Other than for me to know and understand a little bit more about that. So still put it in there, but I just want you to know that if you can, as many to the date that you can give me, the better. And and then after that, I meet with you for 45 minutes because, and I do, like I said, I incorporate the human design into it too. Often throughout the day, the designs will be changing and shifting. So it kind of comes in as a secondary backup confirmation, especially when things are getting really close. If I see line changes, or especially changes with the moon, um, and where we see the design changing, like from one design to a complete another design. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at the profile, and I like to have that 45 minutes where we meet and talk, so that I can. Sometimes it just takes that to kind of push it over, so that I am like, so that I know, because there's a lot that can be determined, especially about the ascendant, by how we are um, viewed by others when they meet us. Like when people talk to me, I'm quite sure that they definitely usually sense that Capricorn. I have been told that that I come across as Capricorn, even though my sun is in Pisces. So um, that's just some of that. And I just wanted to make sure that I threw that in there, so that, you have a little bit of an idea about how that works. If you have questions, please feel free to contact me. Um, you can schedule a reading with me. You can visit my website, www.astroenergetics.org. You can click the link in my Instagram bio. You can also find me on the Quantum Alignment page as one of the specialists. So all of the information that I provide in regards to quantum human design is written and reserved by Karen Curry Parker from the Quantum Human Design System. And I'm so grateful to be a part of this community, and absolutely love everyone. Um, and I just want to say thank you to everybody, because you guys have been so supportive and so just there for me. It's family. So I have so much love for you. And I just want to thank you guys for listening, watching. I hope that you found this interesting. Please leave comments. You can always visit my website. You can message me from there. You can direct message me on IG. I love interacting. Oh, and one more thing that I want to say, almost forgot. I am going to be starting a podcast, and it's called Call Me Clorinda. And I'm excited about this. I want to do something different. I want to talk about what people want to talk about. So I want to hear what you want to talk about. Like if you have questions for me, I want to hear about that. So please send me messages about questions you would like me to kind of talk about, or things that you want me to go into detail about on this podcast. I'm looking at a couple of options. I'm not going to give an exact launch on it yet, but it's coming down the pipelines pretty quickly. I have an idea this month. So you might even be able to guess, because I've been talking about Uranus and Aquarius quite a bit. But but I want to actually have conversations with you, so that you can leave me messages, and we can kind of I can kind of address what your questions are. So I'm working on that, and I want you to know that I send out lots of love and healing to everyone, and thank you.